Imagine working at a fast food restaurant, where your boss secretly watched everything. Not from a security camera. Not from outside the store. But from inside the store. Every move you made was seen. Every word you spoke was heard. Every sigh, every smirk, every eye roll was noticed. What if the person you ignored, the one you disrespected, had the power to change your entire life? Before we get started, hit that subscribe button, because this story is about to get intense. It was just another ordinary night shift at Fresh Bite Burgers. The kitchen was loud, grills sizzling, fryers bubbling, orders being shouted across the room. The smell of grease and stale coffee hung in the air, clinging to uniforms that had seen too many hours and too little appreciation. One man moved unnoticed, blending into the background like an afterthought. His shoulders slightly hunched, his uniform hanging loose over his frame. No one spared him a second glance. No one cared to ask his name. To them, he was just part of the others. But what they didn't know was that this man wasn't just here for the job. He wasn't here for a paycheck. He wasn't here because he needed money. He was here for answers. Somewhere in this very building, behind the swinging doors and the cheap plastic name tags, something was wrong. Something deep, rotten, festering beneath the surface of what looked like an ordinary fast food restaurant. And tonight, he was going to find out exactly what it was. For months, the whispers were everywhere. Stories of mistreatment buried beneath layers of silence. Employees were quitting in droves, but they never said why. Some left quietly, heads down, shoulders tight, as if afraid of what might happen if they spoke too much. Others left angry, voices raised, but their words never seemed to reach the top. And so, this man decided to step inside his own creation to discover what shocked him the most. The restaurant pulsed with motion, a well-oiled machine of hands moving fast and voices raised over the clatter of metal and glass. Grills hissed, smoke curled toward the ceiling, and oil popped from deep fryers, sending up the unmistakable scent of salt and grease. Orders came in rapid succession, names scribbled on waxy brown bags, meals hurriedly assembled and passed across the counter to waiting hands. Workers moved with purpose, their steps quick, their eyes darting toward the clock when they thought no one was looking. There was no time to pause, no time to breathe. Just a steady, relentless rhythm that didn't allow for anything but efficiency. Behind the counter, cashiers forced smiles, voices polished from repetition. "Welcome to Fresh Bite. What can I get for you?" The words came out smooth, automatic. A script written into their bones. Their hands flew over registers, punching in totals before another plastic tray slid across the counter, another receipt curled against a palm. Somewhere in the back, a cook flipped patties in a mechanical motion, his arms aching from hours of standing in front of the heat. A line of orders stretched before him, too many to count, too many to think about. He just had to move. Keep moving. Keep cooking. The delivery driver leaned against a steel counter in the back, staring down at his phone, reading messages that would go unanswered until the shift was over. He rubbed his eyes with the heel of his palm, willing away the exhaustion before his name was called again, before another route was shoved into his hands. And through it all, unnoticed, unseen, there was the janitor. He moved differently than the others. Slower. Quieter. A presence that barely registered. He passed behind them with a mop in hand, pushing it across the same floor where 100 feet had already tracked in grease and dirt. No one greeted him. No one looked his way. To them, he was just there. Another worker. Another uniform. Another set of hands assigned to the things no one else wanted to do. He emptied trash bins overflowing with discarded wrappers, wiped down tables where crumbs had been left behind, cleaned smudged glass doors that no one ever noticed had been dirty in the first place. No one asked his name. No one asked when he had started or how long he had been working there. It didn't matter. He was just part of the backdrop, as unimportant as the napkin dispensers, as ignored as the flickering neon menu overhead. At least, that's what they thought. Because while they worked, while they rushed from station to station, while they drowned in routine and exhaustion, he was listening. And by the time they realized the truth, it was already too late. The shift had barely begun, and already, the weight of it sat heavy on the workers inside. The cashier at the front ran a hand through his hair, sighing between customers, eyes dull, voice worn thin from hours of forced pleasantries. The cook rolled his shoulders, trying to shake out the ache in his muscles before stepping back toward the heat of the grill. The delivery driver tucked his phone into his pocket with an exhale, bracing himself for the next call, the next run, the next few hours of city streets and impatient customers. But the janitor's movement never changed. No rush. No hesitation. Each step placed with quiet precision, each stroke of the mop deliberate, each sweep of the rag across the counter slow and thorough. He worked like a man who had done this for years. Like someone who had accepted his place. Like someone who belonged there. And maybe that's why no one paid him any attention. Maybe that's why they spoke so freely when he was around. They thought no one was listening. But he was. Man, this place is a joke. You see how they treat us? We're nothing to them. If you're not one of them, don't expect a raise or respect. He heard every word. The frustration buried beneath their voices. The resentment curling at the edges of their laughter. The quiet certainty in the way they spoke about their jobs. Like they had already given up. Like they had already decided things would never change. He didn't react. Didn't pause. Didn't let a single flicker of expression pass over his face. He just kept mopping. Kept working. Kept listening. Maybe, on another night, he would have ignored it. Maybe, if he had been anyone else, he would have let it pass, let their voices fade into the hum of the restaurant, let the weight of it settle somewhere in the back of his mind before moving on. But this wasn't just another night. And he wasn't just anyone. Soon, the truth would come out. And when it did, no one in this building would ever see him the same way again. The difference was obvious. The lines had already been drawn, deep and unspoken. Some workers moved freely. They joked, laughed, took their time when things slowed down, leaned against the counters, scrolled through their phones. They weren't nervous when the manager passed. They weren't watched as closely. And then there were the others. The ones who kept their heads down. The ones who moved fast, but not fast enough. The ones who barely spoke unless it was necessary, because every word felt like it had to be measured. They weren't safe, though. That much was clear. It wasn't just in the way they were given the worst jobs, the hardest shifts. The kind of work that broke a person's back while others stood by. It was in the way they were spoken to. The way they were looked at. Like they weren't supposed to be here. Like they didn't belong. The first insult was casual. Thrown like an afterthought, but aimed with precision. You people move slower than molasses. I swear, I could train a dog to work faster than you. The young cashier stiffened, his hands stilling for half a second over the register before he forced himself to keep scanning the order. The manager smirked, leaning against the counter like he was talking about the weather. Like the insult wasn't meant to cut deep. "Hey, Darnell, tell me something," the manager called out, lifting his voice above the noise of the kitchen. "Why is it that every time one of you is on shift, we fall behind? I mean, seriously, is there some kind of special school they send you to where you learn to be this slow?" There was laughter. Not from everyone. Not from the ones who understood what was really being said. Darnell's shoulders tightened. His hands curled into fists at his sides. He didn't turn around. Didn't take the bait. The manager grinned. "Yeah, that's what I thought." Another moment. A different worker this time. The youngest one in the kitchen trying to keep up, trying to do it right. He was working the grill, flipping patties, his face tight with concentration. Too slow. Too careful. Jesus, can you be any more useless? The manager's voice was sharp this time, irritation bleeding through. He stepped up beside the boy, shaking his head. How hard is it to cook a damn burger? You stand here for 8 hours a day, and you still can't get it right? You people love to talk about opportunity, but look at you. I gave you this job, and you can't even do it right. The boy swallowed hard, his grip tightening on the spatula. You're lucky we even hire you, the manager continued, voice dropping lower, for him alone. No one else will. You ever think about that? What happens when I fire you? Think McDonald's is gonna take you in? You think you're going anywhere? The boy didn't answer. Didn't dare. He just flipped another burger. The manager chuckled under his breath and walked away. And then, another moment. The delivery driver, arms full of heavy boxes, struggling to push through the back door. He stumbled, just for a second. It was long enough. The boxes slipped. They hit the floor with a loud, hollow crash. Silence. Then laughter. From the manager. Look at this shit. He shook his head, stepping forward, standing over the fallen boxes like they had collapsed out of sheer stupidity. He glanced at one of the other employees, one of the white ones, who had been leaning against the sink, watching. See what I mean every time. It's like they just can't help themselves. The driver bent down quickly, gathering the boxes, stacking them again, hands moving too fast. The manager crouched beside him, speaking low, slow, like he was explaining something to a child. You see, Malik, the problem with you people is that you're all the same. You want the jobs. You want the money. But you don't want to work. You're lazy, clumsy, can't be trusted with anything important. Malik clenched his jaw. He kept stacking the boxes. The manager smiled. Do you even have a green card, Malik? The words were mocking, filled with fake curiosity. Or are you one of those guys who got lucky? Another laugh. The worker at the sink grinned. The manager stood up, brushing imaginary dust off his pants. No wonder they don't let your kind run shit. Malik picked up the last box, stood up straight, and walked past him. The manager watched him go, amused. Yes, keep walking. No one reacted. No one ever did. But the janitor watched closely. He had seen enough. He has seen everything that has been happening all night. The insults. The mockery. The dismissiveness. It was always there, beneath the surface, simmering in every shift, in every interaction. Some nights, it was quieter, subtle. Other nights, it was like a slow, humiliating dance where only some were made to twirl. But tonight, it was loud. And Marcus could feel the weight of it pressing down like a thick, suffocating fog. The next was Isaiah. He had been working harder than anyone else on the line, moving between the grill and the prep station with quick, practiced motions. The kitchen was packed, the orders non-stop, and Isaiah had been holding it together, keeping up, keeping his head down. And then, a small mistake. The bun slipped slightly off-center on the patty as he wrapped a burger. Nothing major. It wasn't burned. It wasn't ruined. It could have been adjusted in seconds. But the manager was already there. Already watching. And as soon as the mistake happened, his voice sliced through the kitchen. What the hell is this? Isaiah froze. The spatula in his hand hovered mid-air. The manager stepped closer, grabbing the wrapped burger off the tray and unwrapping it with a flourish, like it was the most offensive thing he had ever seen. Are you serious right now? His voice was louder than necessary. Loud enough for the customers in the front to hear. Loud enough that Isaiah's shoulders tensed before he even turned around. The manager held the burger up with 2 fingers, shaking his head. This is why I don't like hiring you people for real jobs. Can't even make a damn burger right. Silence. Thick, uncomfortable. A few of the workers stiffened, but no one spoke. Isaiah swallowed, his eyes flickering up for half a second. Wrong move. The manager's smirk widened. You got something to say, boy? The word sat heavy in the air. Isaiah shook his head. The manager stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough so the customers wouldn't hear, but the workers would. Didn't think so. He shoved the burger back into Isaiah's hands, sneering. Fix it. And try not to be so goddamn slow about it. Isaiah said nothing. He fixed it, wrapped it again, placed it on the tray, and kept working. But the janitor saw the way his fingers trembled slightly as he reached for the next bun. Saw the way his eyes darted toward the clock, counting down, just trying to make it through the shift. He had seen that look before. Too many times. And then, another moment. A different worker, a dishwasher named Jamal. He was younger than Isaiah. Younger than most of them. He had been doing dishes for the past hour, arms deep in soapy water, steam rising around him as he worked through a stack of trays. And then the back door swung open. The cold air from outside rushed in, and with it, the assistant manager. He wasn't much different from the manager himself. Same smug expression, same easy arrogance. He walked in, took one look at the sink, and scoffed. Jesus, are you still back here? He strode forward, peering over Jamal's shoulder like he expected to find him slacking off. What the hell have you been doing? Jamal didn't pause. Didn't turn around. Just kept washing. The assistant manager reached down, plucking a wet tray from the drying rack, tilting it in his hands. You call this clean? Jamal tensed. I just finished that one. It is, he stammered. A loud clang. The tray hit the floor hard. The noise echoed through the back room. Jamal froze. The assistant manager stepped back, shaking his head, voice dripping with disgust. You people are something else, I swear. Always doing the bare minimum and expecting a damn trophy for it. Jamal's fingers curled around the rag in his hand. The assistant manager smirked. Are you mad? He chuckled. Go ahead, boy. Say something. Jamal didn't. Couldn't. The assistant manager clicked his tongue, stepping past him, nudging him slightly with his shoulder as he passed. That's what I thought. Jamal bent down, picked up the tray, kept working. The tension in the kitchen was suffocating now. The janitor looked around and saw the workers exchanging glances. Saw the barely concealed frustration on their faces. The exhaustion. The quiet, aching anger. And through it all, the manager stood in the middle of it, hands on his hips, surveying his empire like a king watching his subjects break their backs for his amusement. He turned, and his eyes landed on the janitor. A slow smirk spread across his face. Hey you, look at me. The janitor didn't respond. Didn't pause in his mopping. Hey you mop boy. There was silence followed by footsteps as he walked towards him. Are you deaf? The janitor lifted his eyes. The manager grinned, tilting his head. There he is. He took another step forward, looking at him up and down, like he was examining an old worn-out shoe. I keep forgetting you're even here. You're so damn quiet. The worker by the fryer chuckled. The assistant manager smirked. The janitor didn't move. The manager sighed, shaking his head. Let me ask you something. You like your job? The janitor blinked. The manager grinned wider. Yeah, of course you do. I mean, this is what you people do, right? He gestured to the mop and the bucket. Clean up after the rest of us. Real natural at it. Another chuckle from the corner. The janitor's fingers flexed slightly against the mop handle. The manager stepped closer. Tell me something, man. His voice dropped slightly. You ever get tired? Do you ever look around and realize that no matter how hard you work, no one's ever going to see you as anything but this? The janitor held his gaze while the manager smirked. Didn't think so. Then the mop bucket tipped. A sharp, deliberate kick. Water sloshed out, spreading across the floor, soaking into the janitor's shoes. The kitchen erupted in laughter, but he didn't react. He didn't flinch, nor did he step back. He just stood there watching them silently. The laughter slowly died down. The manager raised an eyebrow and motioned toward the mess. "Clean it up, boy." The janitor bent down, picked up the bucket, and in that moment, something shifted. Something changed. He had seen enough. He had heard enough. And he straightened, reached up and took off the janitor's hat. This was the moment everything would change. The laughter had barely faded when Marcus took off his janitor's cap. For the first time since he had stepped into this place, people were looking at him. Really looking at him. Some of them blinked in confusion. Others exchanged glances, their faces flickering between uncertainty and curiosity. But the manager didn't look confused. He looked irritated, like he had just been interrupted in the middle of something important. His arms crossed over his chest, his lips twisting in a smirk that barely covered his impatience. "What the hell are you doing?" he asked with his eyes narrowing. Marcus didn't answer. Not right away. Instead, he lifted his head, squared his shoulders, and spoke in a voice that was clear and far too calm for what was coming next. "I am Marcus Thompson." There was a pause. A heavy silence that thickened the air like a storm about to break. "And I've just spent 1 week as a janitor in my own restaurant." For a second, the manager's smirk faltered. Then, like a man deciding that something wasn't worth his time, he snorted and shook his head. "Yeah, okay," he scoffed. "And I am the damn mayor." A few workers chuckled under their breath, uncertain, waiting for the punchline. Marcus didn't blink, didn't flinch. "You don't believe me?" The manager scoffed louder this time. "Let me get this straight. You," he gestured toward Marcus, his voice laced with disbelief. "You're trying to tell me that you own this place?" Marcus said nothing. The manager laughed. A short, dismissive sound. "Man, get the hell outta here with that." He waved a hand. "Ain't no way you own a business like this." Something in the room shifted. The workers who had been watching closely, the ones who had felt the weight of every insult, every slight, every unspoken rule, stood even stiller now. The manager shook his head again, rolling his eyes. "Can you all hear this? This dude's really out here playing dress-up." There was a snicker from the assistant manager. Another smirk from the worker at the fryer. Marcus had heard enough. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and turned it toward the manager. On the screen was a corporate document containing his name, his face, and his tag as the CEO of the company. There was a heavy silence. A long, stretching pause that sucked the air out of the room. The manager's smirk twitched. His eyes darted to the phone. Back to Marcus. Back to the phone. A flicker of doubt. Just for a second. Then, his face hardened again. "Is this some kind of joke?" His voice wasn't as strong now. Marcus turned the phone back toward himself, tapped another button, and lifted it to his ear. A moment later, a voice picked up on the other end. "Hello, Mr. Thompson." A corporate office. A legal team waiting for instructions. Marcus lowered the phone and looked back at the manager. "Still think I'm playing?" The manager's mouth opened, then closed. A beat of silence. The uncertainty was growing now. Spreading. Marcus took a slow step forward. "You want to know why I'm here?" His voice was low now. Steady. "Because I've been hearing a lot of things about my business. About the way my employees are treated. The way my people, black people, are treated." Another step. "And I don't make decisions based on rumors." His voice sharpened. "I like to see things for myself." The manager was still standing tall. But something in his posture had shifted. Marcus could see it now. The first crack. "You've spent the last 1 week treating me like dirt," Marcus continued. talking down to me, laughing at me. And I took it, because I needed to see if the things I'd heard were true. He let the silence stretch before he spoke again. And I have discovered that they are true. The manager's throat bobbed. Marcus lifted his chin. So, I'm going to say this one last time. A pause. A slow breath. You're fired. There was heavy silence. The weight of those two words slammed into the air, heavy and final. The manager's eyes widened, just for a second. Then, anger. Man, you can't do that. The manager's voice rose, desperate now. You can't just... Marcus cut him off. I own this company, he said, voice like steel. And I can do whatever I want. A hush fell over the room. The workers stood frozen, watching. The manager's breath came short, fast. Then, he spun, looking for someone, anyone, to back him up. His eyes landed on the assistant manager. But the assistant manager, who had been smirking just moments ago, wasn't smirking anymore. He was pale. Because he had just realized something. Marcus wasn't finished. Marcus turned toward him next. And you, Marcus said, his voice cutting through the air. You're just as bad. The assistant manager's jaw tensed. You think I didn't hear you? The slurs? The way you dared Jamal to say something back to you? The way you treated people like they were beneath you? He paused and then pointed at him. You're fired too. The assistant manager's face was drained of color. Marcus turned toward the rest. And this time, his voice rang through the kitchen like a verdict. If you have ever treated another worker with disrespect, if you have ever used your power to humiliate someone, if you have ever stood by and let racism happen in my restaurant, get out. A deep, lingering silence. A worker at the fryer stepped back. Another near the register swallowed hard. One by one, they moved. Some of them leaving because they had no choice. Some of them leaving because, deep down, they knew they should. The manager. The assistant manager. The workers who had laughed along. All gone. Marcus let the silence settle. Then, slowly, he turned back to the ones who were left. The ones who had been watching. The ones who had endured. The young cook, Isaiah, who had been humiliated just minutes ago. The dishwasher, Jamal, who had swallowed years of insults. The others. All of them. Marcus took a breath. And spoke. Things are going to change. And for the first time that night, hope flickered in their eyes. Because they believed him. An emergency meeting was called the next day. Marcus didn't waste time. Every franchise owner, every regional manager, every person who had a say in how this company was run, they were all in the same room now. And for the first time in a long time, they were about to listen. Marcus stood at the front of the room. No longer the janitor. No longer silent. But as the owner. The man who had built this company from nothing. The man who had sacrificed for it. The man who had just seen, with his own eyes, how it had rotted from the inside. And now, he was going to fix it. Marcus looked around the room. Some of the franchise owners looked uncomfortable. Some looked nervous. And a few didn't seem to care. They had gotten too comfortable. Too used to things being the way they were. That was about to change. Marcus cleared his throat. And then, he spoke. I built this company on hard work. On respect. And for the past 1 week, I've been inside one of my own restaurants watching, listening and seeing what really happens when the people in charge stop paying attention. His voice sharpened. And what I saw was disgusting. Some of the franchise owners straightened in their seats. Some of them leaned forward. You think no one notices when you cut corners? When you allow managers like that to run your stores? When you let workers get abused, day in and day out, because you'd rather focus on numbers than on people? His jaw tightened. Well, I noticed. There was a heavy silence. And if you think for 1 second that I'm going to let this continue. His voice dropped. You're wrong. A long pause. And then he began to make the changes. Higher wages. Because workers weren't just numbers. They were people. And if this company couldn't afford to treat them right, then the company didn't deserve them. Mandatory anti-discrimination training. Because Marcus had seen what happened when racism went unchecked. And he refused to let it fester any longer. An anonymous complaint system. Because no employee should ever have to choose between their dignity and their paycheck. One by one, the new policies were rolled out. One by one, the franchise owners realized that this wasn't a request. This wasn't optional. This was law. And if they didn't follow it, they wouldn't be franchise owners anymore. Because Marcus was watching now. And he wasn't looking away. The shift was immediate. The toxic weight that had clung to the restaurant. It was gone. For the first time in years, employees walked in without dreading what the day would bring. For the first time, they weren't just surviving their shifts. They were working, but without fear. Without humiliation. Without being made to feel less. Marcus walked through the restaurant, shaking hands with his employees. Real conversations. Real appreciation. He stopped at the kitchen, where Isaiah, the young cook who had been humiliated just days before, was working the grill. This time, he wasn't just a cook. He was a supervisor. Promoted. Given the respect he had earned. Marcus clapped him on the back. Congratulations, he said, and this time, Isaiah didn't look down. He didn't shrink away. He met Marcus's eyes, and he smiled. Because for the first time, he felt that he belonged here. And he knew he did. This is a message for everyone. Marcus didn't just clean floors. He cleaned up the toxic culture that had taken over his business. He wiped away the filth of discrimination. He scrubbed out the stains of mistreatment. And he made sure that no one would ever be treated as disposable again. So now the message was clear. To the workers who had been beaten down, dismissed, humiliated. You are not disposable. To the ones who had been told they weren't good enough, weren't fast enough, weren't worth enough. You deserve respect. And to anyone who ever finds themselves in a place that refuses to give them that respect, demand it. This story isn't just about one company. It's about all of us. If you believe in standing up for what is right, if you believe that no one should have to suffer in silence, then hit that like button, subscribe, share this video, and never let anyone tell you that you don't matter. Because now, the world is watching.